Welcome to the Serendipitous Rebel podcast. I'm Wendy.
And I'm Crystal. We're business coaches and retreat hosts for bold, purpose-driven women who are ready to build businesses that actually fit their lives.
This podcast is for the authentic, rebellious entrepreneur who's done playing by everyone else's rules. We know what works because we've lived it, coached it, and savored the journey.
Join us for real talk on business, life, and everything in between.
Okay, hello everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Serendipitous Rebel podcast. And I'm Wendy Guth, and I'm really excited today to be talking with Michelle Vroom, a business coach who helps moms grow profitable businesses without working around the clock. I can't wait to hear about this. She built a multi-six-figure business in just 20 hours a week. Wow. While raising three boys. And now she teaches women how to cut through the marketing noise, stay focused on what actually works, and build businesses that support their lives, not take them over. So, yay, I'm very excited to have you here, Michelle. And, okay, so I'm really curious. You build a six-figure business, working just 20 hours a week with three boys.
Yes.
I have a boy and a girl, so I can't imagine. So can you take us back to the moment that you realized you had to do business differently than what you were seeing either online or what you were doing before? And what was happening in your life at that time?
Yeah, I don't know if there was a single moment. There were definitely a lot of moments. When I started my business, which I'm coming up on my 10th anniversary, which is just wild to say. When I started my business almost 10 years ago, my oldest son was 6 months old. So I have always had a child at home. So the business kind of started out of that, right? It was like I wanted more flexibility. I still needed to work. I still wanted a career in marketing. And this felt like the next best step for me. So, I knew that business needed to be done differently because I had, my mom watching my son 2 days a week. Like I never had 40 hours, like a standard corporate job. I do come from the corporate world. So I started out doing done for you services. I didn't even do coaching. So, I knew I could only take on a certain amount of clients. I knew that I had, to kind of fit within that schedule. But I also did a lot of working after hours, a lot of working on the weekends, all of that. I got kind of scrappy and just figured it out. Well, as I grew my family and as the business grew, different seasons required different things. So when I had my third child, who was my May 2020 pandemic baby, I knew like I was really maxed out at that point, and I knew like I needed to really focus on making my group program my primary source of revenue, just given the amount of hours that I had and what childcare looked like and all of that. So, there's been many different moments over the years where I've realized like you really have to get scrappy. I mean, because I've always had a kid at home, I knew like my marketing had to fit within the hour window that they would be napping. Were there days where I got 2 hours? Sure. But those were not very often. I knew I usually had an hour of nap time to be able to just like, I called it my nap time hustle, right? To be able to focus on marketing. So I always had to kind of live within those constraints. And, at the time, I'm sure I felt kind of, I don't want to say resentful, but just stressed about like and anxious, like always feeling like I could do more, Now I'm realizing what an asset that is because when people hire me, part of why they hire me is because I've had to be very intentional, very strategic with my market in 60 minutes a day, right? A lot of the people who hire me, they are wanting to make their group program their signature offer. They've sold services in the past or they've worked with clients one-to-one. And at some point you always reach a cap. So I had to be really strategic about how I market, how I sell, what I focus on. And I also had to be really strategic about what offer I was focused on as well.
Yes. Oh, I can absolutely imagine. And so tell me about, I'm just really curious about this getting scrappy.
Yeah.
And what exactly does that, look like? And also in terms of, how are you feeling during this time? From the mindset standpoint.
Yeah. I mean, I think again, I always had this like thought of, oh, I should be doing more. I could be doing more. So that
Mhm.
I think as an ambitious woman, like we
Right.
all can relate to that, right? Where you always feel like you could be doing more. So I definitely felt some of that anxiousness. But when I talk about being scrappy, doing things before you feel ready. So an
Mhm.
example would be I knew I needed at some point to have a better pipeline of leads coming in the door. I needed more conversations. And so I
Mhm.
decided to do a free challenge. This was back in 2017, 2018.
Mhm. Mhm.
I decided to do a free challenge and I opened up a private Facebook group to host the challenge thinking I would close it down after. And I loved it so much I kept it open. And now that group, which is my community called Market Like a Boss, is like my number one source of clients and revenue.
Mhm.
Had I been like waiting for perfect, had I not just been like, all right, I'm going to do this thing, I'm going to open up this group, like now it's a community where I never run out of leads. And so
Right.
for me, like being scrappy always meant just like starting before you felt ready. And then, in terms of what to focus on, like just figuring out like what are the things that are actually going to produce sales calls, which at the
Mhm.
time obviously produces clients, right? If I were getting on
Mhm.
sales calls, I've sold mostly offers that do require sales calls. They're a bit
Mhm.
more high ticket. Okay, well, if I need to book more sales calls, like what are the things that I absolutely need to do during this hour time that I have while the kids are napping? And I only did those things,
Mhm.
So I think getting scrappy is a combination of like just like doing things, trying
Yeah.
things, and then also once you see what's working, like doubling down on that and not trying to do a million things, which is where I tend to find people at.
Oh, yes, yes. And it's interesting because we have this framework that we use called
Yeah.
Savor.
Yep.
And the S part of it is stepping out of your comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly what I was hearing.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
I had to. I
Yeah.
had to. And I think like I was forced out of it at different points too, because when about a year into business, I lost 3 of my done for you service clients, which
Mm.
was the bulk of my revenue in one day. And it
Oh,
was 2
wow.
months before I was due to give birth to my second child. And I was like, I don't have leads. This is
Oh,
a problem. I never want to be in this situation again. And I think that
right.
forced me to get scrappy too, to make sure that I had plenty of leads.
Yeah.
And that's
Wow.
what led to me starting my community. And that's
Hmm.
obviously what created and led to the business that I have today.
Hmm. So tell me more about your community.
Yeah. So it's called Market Like a Boss. The
Okay.
name is something that I came up with again almost 10 years ago, and it still rings true today. It's about being in control of signing clients. And, every time I talk to people, they tell me they want more consistency. They want more predictability.
Hmm.
I hear that from almost everyone. And by the way, Wendy, I'm not just talking about people who are new in business. I actually hear it from
Yes.
people who have built 6-figure businesses, but they
Yeah.
don't have consistency. Or
Yeah.
they've had a big month or a big quarter or a big year
Hmm.
and they can't replicate it.
Right.
My
Right.
business, I mean, I honestly have spent a lot of time taking this for granted, but
Hmm.
my business is incredibly consistent
Hmm.
just year after year, right? Like it's just the last, 7 years in a row, I've not made anything less than 6 figures working 20 hours a week. It's like the level of consistency I have is something that
Hmm.
I don't see a lot of people having in the industry, including people who are quite successful. And I think it's something that's not talked about. If you've
Yeah.
if you've seen success and you don't have the consistency and predictability, it can feel like hard to even voice that publicly.
Hmm.
So it's like I keep hearing people talk about that and, my desire, it's always been my desire, but my continued
Hmm.
desire is to create a space where we can talk about, that consistency, that predictability. I mean, I just kind of rebranded, if you will, my community to be focused on helping women become the 20-hour a week breadwinner. And
Hmm.
breadwinner doesn't mean you have all the stress on you and pressure, right? It's not that like the term, years ago where it's like you work 60 hours a week and you are stressed all the time. It's like 20-hour a week
Right.
breadwinner, you make a consistent, predictable revenue for your family. You make 6 figures working 20 hours a week. And I just think so many people want that, but so many people don't feel like they have a clear path to making that happen.
It's interesting. We talk a lot about what does success look like, and it's
Mm-hmm.
very different for a lot of people. We also talk a lot about, do you want an empire? Do you want to build an empire? And that seems to be one of those, catch-alls. I want an empire. And the fact of the matter is, a lot of the industry thought leaders are like, well, if you want an empire, you have to work for it. And it's that, X number of hours for every $100,000 you want to make, that kind of thing. And it's this I find to be absolutely fascinating, because one of the things at Serendipitous Rebel is that, for both Crystal and myself, while we want an empire, we're not willing to put the hours in to get it. So it has to be an empire, what it looks like to us and what success looks like to us. So this is absolutely intriguing to me, because, and I want to know a lot more, because, I think the idea of working the 100-hour weeks, or what my father used to do, and having that, well, you have to work a lot of hours to be successful, it doesn't necessarily wash anymore, especially if you want a family and extra hobbies, or the ability to do things that really light your fire. So, so I am really intrigued about working 20 hours a week. I mean, what does that look like for you?
Yeah. So the breakdown again, like I like to think of it in different categories, right? So you've got marketing, you've got sales calls, essentially. You have client work, and then I'll say, like, buffer and admin time. That could look like a lot of things, but you get the idea. Right. So if you put those, if you put things into those categories, spending 60 minutes a day on marketing. I actually had a breakdown that I created one time for my audience. I'm going to see if I can find that while we're talking. But, working 60 minutes a day in your marketing. I think, at one point I was doing, let's say, an hour or two in sales calls every single week. And then the rest of that time was focused on client service. Let me see, though. I think I have this breakdown here so that I can actually share. And this has changed over the years, right?
Sure.
I think that's important to note too, is like what we're talking about doesn't mean that you have to, this has to look like this all the time. Like, as my kids are older now, right? Like, they are in school full time. Like, there's differences in how this has looked for me. But if I look at marketing and sales activities, so let's say 5 hours a week for marketing, right? Which is what is marketing? Connecting with potential clients, 3 sales calls per week, 3 hours a week. I used to block off 2 hours a week to just create and schedule content. So I kind of had that ready to go. And then spending an hour a week following up with leads. So that was about 11 hours a week, marketing and sales, right? So I'm kind of putting both of those buckets together. Yeah. So 60 minutes a day for marketing, right? And then the other part of the time, like converting the conversations you're having, right? Talking to people about your offer, selling, which, some people don't do enough selling and then wonder why there's, a lack of consistency.
Right.
The other side of this, and this is going to look different depending on what offer you have and what your business model looks like. My business model has had to change. I will be very open and vocal about that to get to 20 hours a week. I don't think I could have done that, Wendy, doing the done for you. Okay.
Right. No.
So I think that's important, because a lot of people try to pretend like you can, it can work for everyone regardless of business model. And I'm like, well, some business models are a little bit easier to make that happen than others.
Sure.
However, client service, back when I had a small pool of one-to-one coaching clients and a group program, so I was doing both, I was spending about 7 hours a week serving my clients.
Okay.
So, and then if you break it down, right, per week, it's like 11 hours a week marketing and sales, 7 hours a week client service, and then let's just say 30 minutes a day of like admin buffer time. That might be, more or less depending on what's going on, but let's just say roughly 2 hours a week, okay, of like admin, behind the scenes type stuff, which people do too much of that. And then, spend the 2 hours a week like marketing and selling. And again, wonder why there's a lack of consistency.
Yes.
That breaks down to 20 hours a week. So I
Okay.
just gave you the 20-hour a
Yeah.
week. Like, what
Yeah.
am I actually focused on? Because I'm not
Right.
spending 20 hours a week on my marketing. I'm spending 20 hours a week total. Now,
Right.
if I'm in the middle of, like, let's say I've created and launched a brand new program, I might still have 20 hours a week, but I'm using that. Like, maybe I'm more focused on
Sure.
the selling than I am on certain other pieces. Like, there's different ways that you can
Right.
adjust that depending on what's going on. But what you will notice in that breakdown is I'm not spending all my time serving clients and very little time marketing and selling, which is what I see happen. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
people, do that, get caught up with clients, and then they're like, well, if a client leaves or I need to fill some spots, like, where's the demand? Well, the demand
Right.
isn't there because it starts and stops with you, you
Right.
know?
Well, yeah. And I mean, I've always I worked in the corporate and the nonprofit world.
Me too. I
Okay.
started in a nonprofit actually.
And
Yeah.
so we know about when it
Yep.
comes to membership, retention and recruitment.
Yes.
And you know that there's a fine line and a balance, though it's always easier to retain a
Mm-hmm.
member than to recruit one, but there is a fine line.
Yep.
So that's now, may I ask, do you have help?
I have a full-time team member
Okay.
who does a lot of like admin
Right.
behind the scenes
Okay.
things for me. I didn't hire help. I always had like a VA. I think a couple
Okay.
years into business started with a VA, but I didn't really start hiring team members until 2019 when I was on the brink of my first six-figure year.
Okay. Okay.
So,
All right.
I've had differing team at different points, again, depending on business model. I'll also be very direct and say, like, my business model is not low ticket, high volume. It's
Right.
fine if
That's
that's yours,
yes.
right? But that
Yes.
has always, I think that's very
Yes.
challenging to get to six figures working 20 hours a week as quickly as you
Yes.
want. A
Yes.
lot of people have been sold this like passive income, create a course, create something super low ticket. And I think those are the people that are finding it challenging. I've
Yes.
always been really focused on relationships, even inside
Mm-hmm.
of my group offers. And
Mm-hmm.
so for me, I never needed a ton of clients, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which means I don't need a huge team to help support client fulfillment or the marketing and selling required to get those clients.
Okay. So your funnel is you bring people into your group,
Mhm.
and then and you love on them, and then when they know, like, and trust you, they're willing to go the next step.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, that is just such logical way of doing business. And um, it also strikes me as being less stressful than, yeah. So I'm really curious because you had talked about moms doing too much in their marketing. So I'm really curious about what would be like the top few things that you see moms in your, people in your world, where do they pour their energy that's actually doesn't move the needle, because the whole point of this is to move the needle.
Yeah. I mean, outside of pouring their energy into their clients, which I'm not saying
Mm-hmm.
don't serve your clients, but many of the women I work with overserve their clients, and that's where they spend all
Mm.
their time and they have nothing left for marketing and sales.
Mm-hmm.
It should actually be the reverse. Like, yes, serve your clients well, but focus on marketing and selling. Like, make that the first thing you do every day before you
Mm-hmm.
jump down the rabbit hole of like, let me over deliver for my clients to make sure that they're all happy with me, which I think comes
Mm-hmm.
from fear. We have to
Mm-hmm.
check ourselves on that. But outside of that, I see a lot of people trying to keep up with multiple platforms. They're trying to make every platform their hub. And when I
Mm-hmm.
say hub, it's like imagine you're hosting a party. Well, where is that party? Right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
where are people finding you and how are they getting to know
Yeah.
you? If I had tried to do that on my Facebook group, in Instagram, like, and all the places, I would have been completely maxed out. And so I see a lot of people trying to do that. They're trying to keep up,
Yeah.
which I think is challenging. They're also spending a lot of their time growing their audience when they need to be spending more of their time converting the people they already have because they're telling themselves I don't have enough. It's all rooted in
Mm.
I don't have enough.
Right.
I think a lot of people are pouring far too much time and money in ads and funnels that are directed toward cold traffic and then
Mm.
wondering why they're not seeing the conversion rates. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
demonizing any of these strategies, but
Sure.
I don't
Sure.
think a lot of people have been, I don't know, I think that there's been maybe a lack of context in the market about like what makes the most sense, especially if you're growing to six figures.
Sure.
Again, like if someone told me I'm getting, I want to get to six figures working 20 hours a week as quickly as possible, I would not tell them to sell a self-study course.
Right.
I wouldn't tell them to set up a funnel and set up ads. Like you don't have to. So
Mm-hmm.
I think I see a lot of people also like trying to sell too many things,
Mm-hmm.
trying to
Mm-hmm.
do this and that, and
Mm-hmm.
like reinventing the wheel every 5 seconds and then feeling exhausted, when in reality what you need to do is you need to look at what's working well that I can double down on, and what needs improvement. Either I
Mm-hmm.
improve it or I let it go completely because maybe it just doesn't make sense for this season. I also see a lot of people, and it's funny because content can get you clients, absolutely, but like any good thing, there's too much of a good thing. I see a lot of people just posting content and hiding behind their content and not having any form of conversations. Or like, let me put out my podcast and just record episodes and call it a day and say that that's marketing. Well, listen, I have a podcast I love. Obviously, I love doing
Mm-hmm.
podcast interviews, but that alone is not going to drive
Right.
your marketing, especially
Right.
because it's a longer term strategy. You also
Right.
need to understand the difference between short term strategies and long term strategies, and what you can have a mix in your marketing strategy,
Mm-hmm.
but like what makes the most sense to get you where you're going now. If it's, let me put out my podcast, a brand new podcast, and hope that I sign a client next week or next month, that's not going to happen.
No.
Just like, let me go get featured on podcasts and hope that I get a client from it in the next few days. Well, no, you don't
Right.
even know when that interview is going to air. So I
Exactly.
also just think a lot of people haven't been told, or
Right.
they're not like working with experts who can help them be intentional about where they are putting their time and energy, because not all strategies are created equal and are meant for every single business owner, just like not every business model
Right.
is created equal and meant for every business owner, and there are
Right.
trade-offs.
Yeah.
And you can choose whatever you want, but you have to know the trade-offs, and most people don't know or aren't thinking about the trade-offs.
That is so, so true.
Mm-hmm.
So what type of clients do you typically work with?
I typically work with strategists, business consultants, or coaches, people who have previous experience selling a service,
Mm-hmm.
have a fairly established business and are looking to really get to the six figures working 20 hours a week. For many
Mm-hmm.
of them, that does involve selling their group program and like really making that kind of their big money maker. For
Right.
others, it might be shifting away from done for you.
Yeah.
You can still keep done for you clients, but adding a coaching or a consulting arm so that they're not
Mm-hmm.
capped. It's like helping you, women who are already successful, who are already making money, maybe have made six figures in the past, but want more consistency. It's helping them create that consistent, predictable revenue, which for
Mm-hmm.
most of my people is at least 10 to 20K months, particularly from some kind of a group program offer.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, like I don't believe I would have ever gotten to six figures working 20 hours a week and stayed there consistently if I didn't have some kind of an offer that allowed me to still go deep with my clients, but
Sure.
maximize my
Sure.
time,
Sure. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
it makes
Yep.
complete sense.
Yep.
And also, again, thinking about Savor, it's that open to connection and open to community,
Mm-hmm.
which I think right now is so incredibly needed, so
Mm-hmm.
incredibly. I mean, we do an in-person retreat, or we do retreats that, is where we see the need for people to come together. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you find the same thing, that people
Yeah.
want that connection.
Yes.
And not only with you, but
Yep.
with each other. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I'm also curious about, and what we've found is there's this, I just need to change my strategy. I need a better strategy. It's always, what out there. And there's a little bit of that. Well, I see someone else. We find a lot of, I see someone else out there and they seem to be doing so much better. So they must have a better strategy that I need to follow. And, but at some point it's like, okay, how does someone know the difference between I need a better strategy and I just need to stay consistent with the one I already have?
Well, I think even the way you just framed that is a good gauge for people. Like, ask yourself, how long have I actually been sticking with this strategy?
Mm-hmm.
And have I not just stuck with it? Because it's not about, let me stick with the strategy for 6 months and see if it works. Have you
Mm-hmm.
done the work to work it? Most people have not.
No.
So when I say work it, I
Yeah.
mean, okay, evaluate what's happening, what's working well that I can tweak and, adjust and double down on, and what's not working well that needs to be improved upon. You have to do that over and over and over again. Like I'm obsessive about that to the point where when you work with me, every week you have to fill out what I call a CEO flow form where we are looking at your numbers.
Okay.
How many
Yeah.
clients did you sign? How
Right.
many sales calls did you book? Did you
Uh-huh.
hit your goal? If yes, what worked well that you can repeat? If no, what didn't work well that we need to tweak? Like I am reading those every week. Like we do not leave anything up to chance.
Which is
And
wonderful.
so
Yeah.
it's like if
Yeah.
you are willing to do that every single week and you do that long enough and the strategy still doesn't work, then
Okay.
maybe you change a strategy, but it's not really about the strategy. It's about your willingness to work it and to
Mm-hmm.
stay consistent with it. And
Mm-hmm.
most people, we live in a world where it's like instant gratification.
Yeah.
And if we don't
Yes.
see that immediate result, it makes us
Yeah.
uncomfortable. I think
Yeah.
oftentimes, and I'm going to include myself in this, it's easy to like want every week to be a blowout, to be like this amazing week in business. And it's like some weeks are quiet, some months are quiet.
Yeah.
That's not abnormal. I think
Mm-hmm.
somewhere along the way, people in this industry got the feeling that it was normal or it was abnormal. It's not. It's very normal to have those ebbs and flows and those different cycles and
Mm-hmm.
seasons. So I
Yeah.
think expectations are important. Like, what are you expecting? And are you actually working the strategy? And then once you make the tweaks, right? Are you then giving it some more time before you look at how those are performing? It's like people just
Right.
snap judgments. It doesn't work. Well, I think that that's a cop out. I think it's an excuse. I think it's a crutch to not do the work to work it because that work
Yeah.
is not sexy. That work is not glamorous work, but that's what produces results. And I've been willing to do that work, which is why I've been able to have the
Right.
level of consistency that I have. I'm not some like unicorn woman who always has it figured out, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and what I think is fascinating is that the need to, and we're in a very performative society. And the online space, I think, especially is we're expected to perform, we're expected to show an outward appearance that it's performative. It's like how many, meetings have we been to, industry meetings, where you get up and the first person talks about not six figures, it's eight figures, that kind of thing. And then it's like, how do I top this? And I think that part of this, and it's somewhat common for women, I guess, is there's this whole guilt factor into it. I know that I've felt it. If I don't work X number of hours, I feel guilty because, I feel guilty. So I'm wondering how you have been able, personally, and maybe you haven't dealt with any of this guilt and the performative side of this, but you've been able to work 20 hours a week and be successful. And I'm not going to say that, but I think you're a little bit of a unicorn. Don't you feel that way at all? That you are unique. Now, of course, what's beautiful about it is now you're able to share this with everybody else. But are you singularly focused when you work? I think that's really my question.
Yeah. I have a lot of guilt and have had a lot
Okay.
of guilt over the years for sure. I enjoy complicating things when I feel uncomfortable with how easy like certain things have been.
Yeah.
I did a podcast episode recently on my podcast about success and how it makes us uncomfortable when things are working. And so we like to create, new challenges.
Mm-hmm.
So for sure, I've done that many,
Mm-hmm.
many, many times over the years, have for sure had that guilt. I think for me, like, have I been singularly focused is a good question. Yes and no, right? Like, yes
Mm-hmm.
at different points and no at different points. I think that once I was able to tap into my community and have a community that converts, like, I just
Mm-hmm.
kept sticking with it. So that's
Mm-hmm.
where I did have a singular focus, whereas a lot of people would have been like, you need to do more on Instagram. You need to do more on this. It's like I didn't start adding things until I already had something working. I think just because
Mm-hmm.
I also like didn't have
Sure.
the bandwidth to do
Mm-hmm.
that. So,
Mm-hmm.
yes, I was singularly focused, but even within that strategy, there's been so many times where I've been doing things. I'm like, wait, I'm making this harder. Like, I have a tendency to over market because I love marketing. And
Mm-hmm.
so, the times when I realized I don't have to do all that and I can really
Right.
focus have usually been the times when I was forced into it. Like,
Okay.
even last summer, I cut my hours in half so that I could be with my kids. No camps, no
Mm-hmm.
babysitter, none of that. And so I was working 10 hours a week and I didn't have
Mm-hmm.
time to do most of the marketing activities that I was used
Mm-hmm.
to. And yet I still was able to double the revenue that I was planning to make in July and August. And it's like, well, why? Because I have demand, because I have relationships, because I have trust. So the
Right.
singular focus there over the
Mm-hmm.
years has also given me the opportunity to, step away if I need to
Sure.
be able to focus on other things. It's like yes and no, if that makes sense, right? It's
Yes,
like because I
sure.
had the singular focus, I do have new opportunities now that I didn't before.
And so, what would one marketing activity that you've doubled down on? So, this over the summer, is there one activity that you particularly doubled down on that, consistently drove the results
I
for
mean,
you?
I think just being really specific about who I was selling to.
Gotcha. Okay.
What's interesting is I, over the summer, was sold out with
Hmm.
my mastermind. So I actually didn't
That's
have
great.
space to take on more
Hmm.
clients. And I ended up asking myself this question. I was like, what would feel fun?
Oh,
Like, what would feel fun to do that would still drive demand and
sure,
trust,
sure.
but was like within the realm of what I could do? And so I decided to
Right.
host something called Summer of Demand, where I basically just showed people in real time how I was building up a wait list. So, documenting what I do for my
Sure,
marketing has actually been incredibly helpful because I'm not adding extra steps. It's like I'm doing the things I would already
sure,
do, which is just
sure.
promote the wait list, but I'm giving people a behind the scenes look at that, which doesn't
Okay.
add any extra time. So that was an interesting thing that was born out of that, right? Was
Uh-huh.
also like, how can I have fun and document what I'm doing instead of feel like I have to, add on all this extra stuff, which I think is what most people do.
Yeah, that's very
Yeah.
true. Yeah,
So
that's
I think just like being specific about the wait list and
yeah.
promoting that and not, people also I think dance around selling, and they don't
Yeah.
sell enough and it's like we overcomplicate that and we have all these extra steps and I'm like, no, I'm just going to sell this
Mhm.
wait list and while I'm doing it, I'll let a group of people come in and pay to kind of watch me do it and I'll share my insights with them. So I had this like private group happening behind the scenes, which again didn't add calls to my calendar.
Mhm.
It
Mhm.
didn't like, it really wasn't any extra work on my end because I was already doing the things that I was doing. I just let them in
Mhm.
and let
Mhm.
them see.
Yeah, that's actually a fantastic idea. And to also just take time when you're in the planning process to think about things like what would be fun or
Right.
what creativity can I show
Right.
that
Yep.
makes you a little different than others.
Right.
That that is
Right.
really terrific.
Yeah.
So you may think of something else for next summer.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And
Yeah.
not forcing it.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
that's very true. And
Yeah.
well, it's like there's so much pressure. And I don't know, I'm sure your clients have felt that. I'm sure you have as well. And so what would be the things that what are your go-to ways to reset yourself when even in those 20 hours, because those 20 hours would be a pressure cooker for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually don't, now that I think about it, I don't work many more hours than that a week myself.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a pressure cooker.
Mm-hmm. So
Um,
how do you reset is your question?
yeah, just yeah. How do you reset? What are your go-to ways of resetting as a mom? Yeah.
I mean, number one, like pay attention to how much you're consuming,
Mm.
you know,
Yeah.
like how much you're watching other people.
Mm.
Because that can create a lot of pressure. I find for me that's usually what does it. Um, letting go of control, it's hard. It's a hard one, Wendy. Like I struggle with that if I'm being totally honest.
Yeah. Yeah.
But for me, like knowing when to go hard, quote unquote, because I'm
Sure.
excited
Uh-huh.
versus when to not force it. Like it used to be like I would be like, oh, I got to make sure I have a video out in my community today. I don't want to lose touch. I don't want people to forget about me. And I've really stepped away from that in the last year or so.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not like you don't need to be consistent, you do, but there's a difference between consistency and like, I'm going to force it. I'm going to force myself to do a video. I'm going to force myself to write an email. And I can
Right.
get in those modes and nothing good comes from that.
Oh,
So I
that
think a
is, yeah.
reset for me might look like a quieter week and being okay with that and trusting that the demand is still there.
Yeah. Well, if you think about it, in 1 week, no one's, and of course, okay, I was going to say no one was going to forget you in a week, even
Right.
in a month, probably even in a summer.
Right.
And but that's your brain telling your heart and your gut all of those various things that doesn't always work. And I know for me, I have to get out of the house, and I row a lot. And if I don't do that, then my system is out of whack, and I'm can be an unpleasant person.
Yeah. I would agree with that. I
Yeah.
think that's very normal. Like
Yeah.
I felt the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that you get to give yourself the reset. A lot of times we fight it,
Yeah. Oh, that's
you know?
very true. It's
Yeah.
very true.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, what I love what you're saying is that you're setting boundaries,
Hmm.
solid boundaries that you work within. And I'm sure you have used the calendars and the planning and have things blocked. I'm sure you do um the usual tools, but it's sticking to it
Hmm.
that really can be hard. Well, if I just do this a little more, or it's after dinner and the kids are asleep, and oh, I can just do a little more. um that isn't necessary. Well, first of all, it's stepping out of your boundaries, and then it becomes, I would assume, unhealthy habits to do that. And
Hmm.
I'm sure you face that, with clients who follow your systems, but but what if I do more?
Yeah. And just,
Yeah.
I mean, again, like the pressure we all feel. And I think really successful women feel this pressure sometimes more than those who are just starting out because it's like, I don't want to lose what I've built.
Yes.
I don't want to go
Yes.
backward.
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't start feeling that until I was like approaching six figures. Like when I was
Yeah.
first starting out, I think I was just excited and,
Mm.
had nothing to lose, so to speak. But
Yeah.
as you grow in your business, it's easy to feel that.
Yes. Yes. And we like to think that it's also taking a look at the excitement and making sure that that excitement continues on. So it's
Hmm.
always looking at, you know, it's aligning with, we say, aligning with your passions and purpose,
Yep.
and making sure that that continues regardless of where you are in your entrepreneurial journey. And sometimes it means tweaking, making little tweaks, and maybe finding things that can light your fire, or if the fire is out, well, what do I do now? And
Yep.
feeling comfortable that it's okay to make changes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I remember the word pivot was such a dirty word for a while. And I never
Hmm.
understood that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, it's like, if you're curious, which it's a good thing to be, then yeah. So, okay. Um what would one belief about marketing be that you had to like completely unlearn to grow your business to where it is today?
Great question. Oh my goodness, so many things I had to unlearn. Well, because I come from corporate and it's
Yeah.
like, number one, I think just the belief that I couldn't be myself. I had to be like
Yeah.
super buttoned up and professional. And here's what I don't mean. I am very professional in the way that
Mhm.
I operate. But
Sure.
I remember, I'll give you an example. I remember at one point in my marketing, especially when my community was like growing and I was doing a lot of, content in there, especially lives. I had like a changing table in the background of one of my lives because in my old
Mhm.
house, I didn't have an office. So I used to do
Mhm.
like my lives out of the corner of a living room. And I
Sure.
had this changing table and I was mortified. I thought, well, people aren't going to hire me because that looks so unprofessional professional. Cause again, coming from corporate.
Sure.
Well, now what I've learned is people hire me because I've had the 3 kids, because I know how to
Yes.
market in 20 hours a week. Like that's a
Yeah.
selling point. It's
Yeah.
not, a detriment to me. And so I think unlearning that piece and really leaning into the transparency. I know that
Yeah.
that word can mean different things for different people,
Sure.
but I think the people who have been transparent in their marketing, who have built those deeper relationships by being themselves, like they're
Hmm.
flourishing right now, especially with
Right.
AI and the way things are going. So I think I
Hmm.
had to unlearn the corporate way of like
Yeah.
the corporate stiff way of marketing.
Sure.
I think too, just unlearning like the belief that, it has to take a long time for people to decide to buy from you. Like you have to and nurture
Ah,
them on end.
sure.
Now, obviously, I've seen success and have demand and trust because I've
Hmm.
nurtured. I haven't
Hmm.
just gone out and sold to cold people.
Hmm.
Same time, if you're not careful, and I think I fell into this at different points throughout my business, you can just keep endlessly nurturing and not actually give people a reason to move forward.
Yes. Yes.
I think
Yes.
that this whole like I don't want to be salesy thing can create that loop. So I for me, I had to unlearn like this belief that everybody needed all this nurturing. Well, some do, some
Mm.
don't, And so being willing to sell to whoever was ready to buy that day, like sometimes I didn't know who they
Sure.
were. But I always
Yes.
know now that there's a portion of people in your audience who are ready to buy, and there's a portion of people who aren't ready yet. And you're selling to the people who are ready to buy. You're not selling to the entire audience. So I think that was another belief that I definitely had to shift and unlearn. I could
Yeah.
go on to come up with a million more.
Right. No, this is actually fantastic. And that is so unbelievably true. And I think it's, again, one of those parts about working in the online space that, it's always, you've got to, you've got to put out so much in order to get a sale. And that you're spot on. It's how you're packaging all of your content and your marketing and what the services that you're providing at different levels that ultimately is what leads to a sale. And mind you, I'm actually not necessarily the marketing person of the Crystal and Wendy show, but I know enough that that is a huge problem. That is an absolutely a huge problem. And yeah, are you writing a book about that by any chance?
No, but I could.
Yes, actually, yes, you could
Yeah.
in your spare time.
Right.
Right,
Right.
exactly. When you get the beach house and you have someone to watch the kids, then you could
There
sit there
you
and write.
go, Wendy. I love
Right.
it. Yep. There you go.
So just a couple more, I've absolutely am so excited to have the opportunity to talk with you, and you've really gotten my curiosity flowing today. So if more moms built businesses the way you teach, with focused and simplified, aligned with their real life, what would be different for what would you think would be different for families and for just the online space?
I think that women would maybe feel more secure.
Mm.
Um,
Mhm.
I think that families would have more options.
Mhm.
I mean, obviously, we know things are expensive more than they've ever been. It's
Yes.
hard, to make ends
Yeah.
meet for some
Yeah.
families. And
Yeah.
um, I think that more women would have more choices,
Mhm.
like be able to give their kids the life that they want to
Mhm.
give them. And what's interesting is I don't necessarily mean the big stuff, though it could be. It's like the extras. Like I
Sure.
call them the extras. Like when I, was growing up, we didn't get dessert when we went out to dinner.
Mhm.
Something as small as that. Like
Right.
it's like, well, now I can get my kids dessert.
Mhm.
Like it's like the little
Sure.
things where I can go buy myself some new clothes. Like
Sure. Sure.
for a lot of the women I work with, it's the simple things. So I think being able to have more choices, being able to give their kids the life they want. I
Mhm.
think that in the industry, we would make a bigger impact.
Mm.
There's so many women who are amazing at what they do. And it's like being able to make a bigger impact in their field,
Mhm.
I think is really powerful. Um, yeah, those are the things that come to mind for me. Like, it's not like
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to lay around in a bathtub of money, great, but I don't think that's really what people are wanting. I think they want the security, the consistency, being able to plan for the future.
Yeah. I mean, you know, whether it's sending your kids, and it's even things like sending your kids to college, sending
Yep.
them to camp
Yep.
for the summer, whatever. Yeah, it is. Yeah, and it's very different than, you know, I think when I know when I was growing up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for you, what does success look like for you right now in this season of your motherhood and your business?
Success right now for me looks like a calm nervous system.
Oh, I
Looks
love it.
like, yeah,
I
it
love
looks like
it.
more calm.
Yeah.
And, yes, the money, but at the same time, like, and I know I'm in a very blessed position to say this, but I also
Mhm.
have worked hard for it, as we've discussed. Like,
Sure.
I could not work this year or sign another client and nothing would change about my life.
Mm-hmm.
And when you get to that place where you have that consistency, more money is always great, but it's not
Yeah.
necessarily the biggest motivator.
Yeah.
I think being able to be there for my kids as they grow older, being able
Yes.
to
Yeah.
still work and have an impact, but also being able to take a little more time for myself. I felt really selfish, like even wanting that as my youngest went off to kindergarten this year. And it's
Sure.
like, well, if they're not home, I need to just be working because I can't just like go take myself out for coffee. I can't just like have a day where I go like relax. And it's like, well, no, you actually can,
Yes. Exactly.
because if I take care of myself, I know that I'm better for my family.
Exactly.
So I
Exactly.
think just like, yeah, continuing to be the support for my kids as they grow older and navigate new things, having a calm nervous system, not
Mhm.
feeling this pressure to have to like market in a certain way every single
Mhm.
day, but to
Mhm.
trust in like what I've built over the years,
Mhm.
trust in the relationships and the demand that I've built. And just, I don't know, like take a breath and like give myself the gift of being like, you don't have to chase so
Yes.
much.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's so
Right.
interesting because I didn't realize that until recently that that was actually my goal.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and I think it's one of those evolutionary things as well. We
Yeah.
call it being in the messy middle.
Yep.
And but it's really being laser focused on what is it that I want and what does success look like?
Yeah.
And
100%.
it's different for everybody. So
100%.
where can our listeners connect with you and learn more about your work?
I mean, the Market Like a Boss community is hands
Okay.
down where I'd love to send you.
Okay. And we will
It's,
include
yep.
links in the show notes.
Yeah, like it's just if you want practical, honest, refreshing, tough love about marketing and being in control of making six figures working 20 hours a week, like that's the place to go.
Okay.
Um, so I would say there, I have a podcast as well called Market Like a Boss. So,
Mm-hmm.
they're kind of one and the same.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I think that's really it. Like that's the place where I hang out the most. That's the place where I connect with my people and talk about the things I'm seeing work well, the things that I think are more challenging for
Mm-hmm.
people. And ultimately, like if you love the concept of being a 20-hour a week breadwinner and you resonate with
Mm-hmm.
this conversation, like that's the community where I want people to go. At the end of the day, Wendy, there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of noise in the industry about things are hard right now.
Mm-hmm.
Sales is hard. People aren't buying the way they used to. And I'm not saying things haven't changed or shifted,
Sure.
but
Sure.
like in my community, we're not sitting around being like, well, I guess we don't have a lot of options. I guess we don't have a lot of opportunity. It's like, no,
Sure.
we're always seeking out the opportunity. We're always raising our standards and focused on what can we control, which is ourselves, right? Like what
Sure.
can we
Sure.
do
Sure.
instead of sitting around like in a room of like people who are like, well, throwing up their hands. I guess there's nothing we can do. Like I want that, my community has always been sort of a
Mm-hmm.
light on the internet and a
Sure.
place for women who are ambitious and want solutions and don't want to just sit around and complain and vent. You know what I mean? Like I
Yeah.
think we've all been exposed to those worlds and it doesn't help you. It makes you feel like you have less opportunity.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
I think there's more opportunity than ever. And I also think that like you get to be, I honestly really will not rest until every woman, and I know, this is a big goal, big ambitious
Yeah.
goal, but like I don't
Sure.
want to rest until every woman has the option to be the 20-hour week breadwinner because
That's
she's in
phenomenal.
control of making money in her
Yeah.
business.
Well, and this is something that you are clearly incredibly passionate about and spearheading. And that
Yeah.
is absolutely phenomenal that you have a big, hairy vision out there that, hey, you will achieve that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed our conversation today. And again, I will drop all of your contact information in the show notes. And thank you so much for joining me today. And for everyone, we will see you again next week.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to subscribe and leave us a rating.
But only if you liked it. Otherwise, just keep it to yourself.
You can learn more about our upcoming masterminding opportunities on our website at serendipitousrebel.com.
And if you have topics you'd like to hear about, be sure to submit them on our website or DM us on social media.
Hey, see you next week. Bye.
Bye.